Welcome to episode 23 of the End Product Podcast. I am Quinny, joined as ever by Stish. And don't forget, guys, wherever you're listening to this, you get your podcast, you watch the video, please do like and subscribe, follow, rate and review, all that good stuff. Stishy boy, it's a big week ahead for you. You're about to go on loan to Ibiza for a week. How you feeling, mate?
Yeah, on loan to Ibiza. I'm not sure about when, what state or I will return in. It's definitely not a warm weather training camp. We're experiencing rain out there at the minute, so it might be a little bit more indoors training than out the outdoors warm weather. But yeah, very excited to get out there. As I mentioned to you off air, like we had like a booked a villa. There's like 13 of us going. And the villa cancelled on us last week, and then we got upgraded to this insane, like James Bond side of the coast house with a nightclub built into it. So I'll probably be a little bit fragile next time we speak on the End Product podcast. But
yeah,
I'm expecting a lot of End Product from the boys. You know, we're all up for it. We've been training for this all our lives, so excited to get out there and get on the pitch, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, you make it sound like a D2 expedition, you know, the muddy weather and, you know, the time of the year and all that. But when you see the setting and the venue, it's definitely more Premier League than Championship. Let's put it like that. It's some bad.
I'll be sure to take lots of pictures and videos. We'll get them up on the Insta. We'll show people how we roll on their product, mate.
So Stish is going on loan to Ibiza for a couple of days because it's going to be all about Euro D2 for a little while, I think, Stishy boy. Today, as we record, we have seen 5 championship clubs be unveiled, and this has kind of been teased, and maybe some people have suggested it's kind of coming because of like some players play another game as well that's kind of the same thing, Ultimate Champions, and it's primarily based on championship licenses that they've maybe lost, or there's been some sort of intel that's came from their communications that have kind of shone a light on potential events to unfold, which we've kind of got at the moment. So I don't think we're surprised-ish, but the first 5 clubs, how do you feel about them?
I'm excited. I think it looks like all of the championship. If you look at the championship on the Sorare website, there's only a few clubs whose badges aren't updated. And I think the ones that weren't, one of them was definitely Blackpool. I'm going to have a little look while we're talking, but most of the clubs look to be onboarded. We've got Watford, Millwall, Burnley, Norwich and Coventry on the market as we record. So you'd expect them to roll these out pretty quickly, to roll out the clubs at the rate that they have been since the first announcement, which was Watford, I think was only a couple of hours ago since, before we started recording this. And in the time since that, they've announced all the others on social media as well. And they're in the marketplace. I think they begin to end in maybe 2 days' time. So that's 5 clubs ready for the weekend, the first Euro D2. And I'd expect a lot more to be rolling out in the coming weeks. The good thing about the championship, obviously, is you get that extra midweek coverage because they've got so many fixtures. So I think this is going to be a good thing, not just for the new competition and the prize pools there, but also for maybe like diluting a little bit the sort of U23 divisions and the All-Star in those midweek tournaments that are usually dominated by the standard kind of like teams that we see constantly. The fact that you're now going to be able to enter these cards in those competitions is definitely kind of like opening up those, like especially U23, I think, for people that maybe felt it might have been out of reach before. So yeah, excited. I think this is a big step for Sorare. What about yourself?
I'm like kind of looking at this whole D2 situation much differently now. All of a sudden, like I'm looking at my rare contingent, and like I've not got many cards, right? But I've got like 6 or something. I'm really missing a forward is the main thing. And the nice thing now is because it's a region, you can filter it in your club dead easy. You just go SO5 League, 2nd Division. It's a doddle now, you know, you don't need to try and find the bloody divisions and highlight them individually. But I've got Rogic, Benkovic, Tanaka and Cham. And then Rehbigger, who's on loan from Leipzig. He's coming back from an injury, maybe he plays. So like, 5 guys. So maybe if I got 1 or 2 more, which I'm kind of open to actually getting another 1 or 2 via tier 2 and tier 3 rewards from any place they become available, you know. Because like if you can even then start fishing, we were talking before coming on, like the prospective access into some major academy pieces on like some of these teams that we have now in the championship, and you would expect it's a very big division, you know, only having 5 teams, it's not even at 25%, you know, of the division. So I would expect to see more forthcoming as the season rolls on at this stage, just with Sorare's form in the past, you know, we'll see what happens. But some of those cards could be fantastic cards to win. And depending on, as we know with the championship, the thing it is the most famous for is you cannot predict the results. You don't know who's going to win that league. You don't know who's going to beat who. Anyone could turn up. No one could turn up. You know, it's real pandemonium in that sense. And I think it's going to be one of those divisions that's got a lot of risk and reward, kind of, you know, changing quite a lot. Depends on your team and the fixtures, you know, and it's not going to be that easy to forecast, which potentially leads to happening into a podium out of nowhere when you really shouldn't have on the merit, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think also as well, you know, there's always been a big sort of like look to the Premier League and that being such an important part of the onboarding process for kind of like the people who haven't yet converted. But, you know, there's going to be at least 3 clubs coming up into the Premier League from this division come, you know, like May time. So that'll put 3 Premier League clubs like in the mix, or at least like players from those clubs in the mix. So it's just going to start filtering more and more, you know, like playable options for players that are in the Premier League for next season, whether the license comes or not. But also, the Championship has a lot of the good players from the Premier League out on loan. A lot of the good young talents get sent out on loan. Um, and yeah, the thought of potentially winning some of those or picking some of those up. I mean, you mentioned off air that classic photo of Harry Kane on the bench at Leicester a few years back, and the potential to win the next Harry Kane, who just happens to be out on loan at Bristol City or Coventry or, you know, Millwall or whoever they're out on loan to. So yeah, it's quite exciting, especially as someone who like enjoys the U23, the scouting side of things. There'll be a lot of players in those kind of year end like ones to watch 2022 players who have like lit up the under 23 divisions who now are out on loan at like these clubs. So yeah, it's going to be nice, especially winning some of the cards from that division and having a little look at who they are, figuring out whether or not you want to hold on to them for a couple of seasons or move them on quickly. But yeah, definitely excited. I think it's a pretty buzzing announcement for me. I think there can't really be any negative side to this one, not for me anyway.
That's fantastic. And I recently spent, I don't know, maybe about a quarter of an ETH or something on a bunch of limiteds from La Liga 2 to play specialist through like the kind of, you know, like the international break, as it were. But I'm now, and I kind of realised coming into this game week, I was like, oh, there's a region that I could just actually like play them there now.
Yeah,
And now I'm going into that reward. The reward pool for this game week was actually really poor, and like it really was. So these cards coming in hopefully buffs that up. Number one, like in terms of the head count, and number two, the quality. So even those limiteds are now like, you know, I'm really happy to really play with that and can experiment with that division to see, you know, just how it pans out, because every region has its own kind of little nuances and threads that go through it in terms of what decides the winners and the losers.
yeah, and also, you know, like early doors in these regions, you know, the prize pools might be a bit smaller at the moment, but you know, each week that comes as those like the supply expands in the divisions, we'll see the prize pool expand with it, but also the the comp the competitiveness of those divisions as well. If you can get in there this week with a team, I think you've got a good shout. You know, if you there can't be, you know, as a percentage of all users, I think a very small slice of like the user base will actually have like a D2 goalkeeper right now that they can use in that division. So, especially in the rare divisions, I think they'll be quite, you know, there shouldn't be quite like that high competition for the cards. So I don't really know what to expect from the kind of like minimum scores to win a card, but I'm definitely intrigued to enter. I think I might enter a pro division this weekend and see how it gets on. I think my weak link at the moment is defence. I've got Nakayama who plays for Huddersfield. He's not nailed on. Um, he is a great defender and he's put up some good scores, but he was left out of the last game. But that may have been because he'd just come back from international duty. So He might get some use on the weekend. At the moment, he's sitting in there, but got I've got Tanaka there. I've got Zorori, who is banging on the doors for a start at Burnley. Joel Piroa, who plays up front for Swansea. And of course, the one who gets the most mentions from me on the podcast every week, Etienne Green, can slot straight in there. While he's such a liability for U23, he can get some use for me in D2 now.
Yeah. Aye, well, that Etienne Green is coming in good.
Eventually, yeah. He seemed. I was happy to see him back in the starting lineup this weekend. Not a particularly good performance from him or from Saint Etienne, but we'll get some utility out of him, and maybe I can kind of like put that team out there and not think too much about it, because I think there's a lot of moving parts there. Zorori probably not going to start, not yet, maybe. So yeah, it'll be nice to enter it, but unless all of those players have a great game week, I'm not expecting too much. But it might not take much. Who knows? It may not take too much to get in the cards in these first couple of game weeks in D2. So be really intrigued to see how people enter, and yeah, bring on the game week, bring on the weekend already. In terms of game weeks, actually, how did you get on last weekend? Any end products from you, Quinny?
Yeah, I sliced out a tier 3 rare from Specialist with the Talis Magno kind of wonder show for the last like 5 minutes of the game at the weekend that he had. And I was just, the Celtic game wasn't too great. McGregor got a red card. Mulgrew DNP'd, so both my uniques were off the table. Obviously, Tony scored.
Yep.
Tony scored off the bench, which was brilliant as well. But like, yeah, I just had a lot of. Each team had something fail on me, kind of idea, and then even the one or two teams I had that were still like fully put together and did kind of well, it just didn't really punch hard enough to really like cement a place. I was just outside spots on a couple of divisions. So yeah, a couple of tier threes. Nothing too spectacular. What about yourself, bud?
Yeah, I won 4 cards last weekend, which was actually like one of the best hauls I've had in a little while. But it was funny because the weekend was a really mixed start for me, because I had a really fantastic score put up by Musiala, and then the next morning I was just kind of let down by a lot of my Asia and America cards over the weekend. Some of the teams didn't hit like I was hoping them to, like Salzburg and Ajax, and a lot of the clubs who I had high hopes for just didn't kind of like come out of the blocks as hard as we'd have hoped. But yeah, I managed to win 4 rewards. I got a tier 1 rare. I won a Brandon Vasquez, which I think is a really good reward. I got in specialist. I finished 8th in the rare specialist rare. Put up a
Nice.
pretty decent score in that. So I finished 8th. I won a tier 2 super rare, which was Denis Dragush, who plays for, I
I've
think,
seen that.
Standard Liège.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't know a great deal about him. Statistically, on Sorare data, he doesn't look outstanding, but he is under 23. I do have quite a lot of under 23 forward options at the moment, so I might look to move him on. I've listed him at the price that he last went for, just to see if there's any takers, but haven't had any offers just yet. But I did also win a goalkeeper, which is always nice. I got Nahuel Guzman, who plays for Tigra in the Mexican Tigra, so in Liga MX. He's got a few fixtures left, not many, but he's put up some decent scores. Tigra, pretty decent side in Liga MX, but he is slightly on the older side. So I might have to keep an eye on any sort of like news on whether or not he's getting moved on or being kept. But in a lot of the South American divisions, particularly in the Mexican, I find that goalkeepers tend to play quite old. If you look at like Ochoa as an example, who's still playing internationally as well, and is the number one at Americas, which is one of the best clubs out there. So yeah, maybe I don't have to worry too much about his age. But another goalkeeper, I've had some offers on him, but not what I'd want.
Yeah.
I could be tempted to let him go. I've got quite a few goalkeepers at the moment, and even in Americas, I've got Talavera. I've got who else have I got? Acevedo. So I've got a few American goalkeeper options already. So whether or not I keep him, I don't know. But nice to win 4 cards. The other one was a limited who I've already sold, so I can't actually remember the player's name. But moved him on quick. Um, he was a cheap, a couple of quid. So just bit of ETH scraping going on there.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, that pretty happy to win some cards, and fingers crossed I can get something in the midweek. I had like Kenneth Taylor put up a score yesterday, but he's in a side that plays without a goalkeeper. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
Musiala
going
got
nowhere.
an assist, then came off at half time. So I think like my all-star rare, the goalkeeper kept a clean sheet, and I still got my 4 outfield players to play. So I'd like to hope I can scrape the ETH, and fingers crossed the players like put. I think like it relies quite heavily on Salzburg having a good game, if I remember rightly, that team. So fingers crossed they do okay in the midweek and
Against
get me
Zagreb.
my ETH. How's your midweek looking so far?
It will all be happening, Stishy boy, in like 4 hours.
Yeah,
Celtic
saw it.
Leipzig today. That's like I've got like 6 teams or something, and I just went Celtic heavy forward. I was saying to guys earlier when I was recording, or maybe maybe you earlier. Sorry, it's been one of those days. I'm sorry, but I've put Maeda in my underdog super rare squad because like I wasn't sure about. I fancy Maeda to start this game, right? But it became kind of known like late Monday, early Tuesday that Abada has got like a mad Israeli holy day where he fasts for 25 hours and you
Oh,
don't like, it's like a day of ritual kind of thing. And it's like nobody messes with it, the idea. So he's Maeda will start, I think. Maybe Haksabanovic comes in because he did start away to Shakhtar, which was a bit of a curveball from the manager. So, it's still maybe a bit undetermined. So because of that, I went with my big team having the safe play of all the guys that will play, like Taylor, for example. I know he'll play, with the McGregor, the Kyogo, and then the real forward card. So, but Lorente in the underdog, he's got the Maeda that I fancy to start and actually probably score probably really well if Celtic do turn up. With the real defender card, which should be one of my best cards this week, and then I've got Jackie Makis who'll be on the bench for Celtic. But the Lorente, come off after 30 minutes last night against Bruges with
oh,
an injury, and it was my captain. So in
oh.
this underdog league where it is 4 cards and then the captain gets a 50% kicker, to get the captain bringing in a 36, like it feels
Mm.
like the rest of the cards, I think they're going to do really well. But I'm nervous that because it's a midweek, it might not really amount to some proper end product. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm
I had a
feeling a
similar.
wee bit about that.
Yeah, I had a similar start in my underdog super rare. I had Kosunu Odilon in there, who was
Oh yeah,
playing for Leverkusen. I mean, he probably wouldn't have put up a great score given the way they turned out yesterday. But I did have like Facundo Colidio in there, and he bagged a goal last night. So
nice,
I've still got Nicky Clark as my captain to play, and Lucas Gornadua, who
cool.
put up a really good score on the weekend. So I don't know. I'm not, I think that underdog super rare doesn't need the scores that maybe the rare does as often. So
Okay,
who knows? Like if they both put up a big score, like if Nicky Clark manages a goal and Gorna Duaf puts up a big all round performance, then I might still scrape my way into the rewards there somehow. But I don't know. I don't
yeah.
have high hopes. My U23 Rare Pro, I had
Your
Musiala.
optimism gives me optimism now.
Yeah, yeah. My Musiala, I had captained him. Um, he got an assist in the 7th minute, and then he had a goal chalked off just before half time. So that would have been lovely. I had him captained again because he put 100 up on the weekend, and I fancied him to go in again. They took him off at half time, so he got his 60 because his all around wasn't great. So looking at what has been going on in the U23 already in this midweek, like Diogo Costa in goal put up close to 100 points, and a lot of the big players had him in goal, and
Of
they've still
course.
got like the Mbappes to play, the Haalands to play. So as much as I think my start was good, I don't feel
Who
particularly
knows?
confident. Yeah, there's not many rewards there, and as much as I do have, Obispo, Veerman, Super Rare, Anthony, and Muric to play, I just don't think looking at some of the scores that are already there, those players would have to put up some hundreds, like at
Yeah.
least 3 of them, I think, to like get me
Compete.
close. So I'm not massively confident, but I do think there's a chance I can still put up a good score. I just don't think it will be enough given what some of the, like Upamecano. There's been some big scores already from players who maybe still only have one or two players left to play, and that happens to be Mbappe or Haaland, who, Haaland plays FC Copenhagen. You'd
Hat
expect
trick.
you'd expect a hat trick, probably the way he's going. Right, his
Yeah.
fourth on the trot is definitely on the cards. So, um,
So that's 80 points.
yeah,
You know.
it's weird because like on any other game week, I'd be looking at that score and be like, decent start, but nah, not this week. I think you've
Yeah.
got to be honest and realistic, and I don't think it would
Gotta
have to.
wait and
It would
see how
take,
PSG and Man City run, eh?
yeah. PSV would have to like absolutely smash for me
They
to get
could,
anywhere near the
as
cards.
you know, they could. Zurich isn't, I think PSV could really run them over if they start like Gakpo and Simons and
Yeah,
they play their best team. They could smash a team like Zurich, no problem, like 5-0 or something. It's not impossible.
this is it.
But you do fear the Champions League powers, just turning up and wanting, because see this breed now of like Haaland and Mbappe, they're all falling in the footsteps of peak Messi and Ronaldo, and peak
Yeah,
Messi and Ronaldo is more than a goal a game in this level. That's what you need to be the man. And we've seen that with Haaland before. Like I think like his Champions League debut, even with Salzburg, he got a hat trick or he gets 2 goals. His goals to minutes always phenomenal. And that's
yeah,
the way Mbappe thinks. That's the way, of course, Messi thinks. Maybe Neymar, maybe not as much. He's never been in that reckoning. But um, when you've got those guys knocking about in the leaderboards still to play, then like even like to the average, like if you had a big card in your like a midfielder, for example, in that game, you might think, oh well, if they don't have a player like that up front, or maybe that game they don't turn, they win so easily they don't really do much,
yeah,
and it's 1-0 and it's not a kind of a non-event. But those games, those guys are turning up saying, well, I'm scoring 3 today. And if they're getting
yeah.
3 goals, that means there's 3 people getting assists potentially, and
Mm,
all the other things that kind of happen subsequently as a result of that. So they have a huge power, not just to them, but if you've got an accessory, if you like, something that plugs into it, and then there is that correlation, like you get a Hakimi or a Mendes
yes.
or these other ones that we see crop up time and time again.
Yeah, yeah, but just looking at what's in and around those prizes, it's insane.
Yeah.
I think like something else I wanted to touch on as well. Actually, you and I often talk about specialist and looking at the pools. That pools increased. I think like off the back of the weekend and what I won in eighth position, I had a little look at like what was won by all of the people who finished in the cards in specialist rare particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt a little bit underwhelmed by the quality of the cards that were won in that division. Um, I don't know about you, but if you've had a little look at the rewards at all, I think like the best card won in the specialist was a Pershers super rare, which is worth about an ETH. But then I think if you did finish in that position, you also won a rare card. So the overall value of that pretty
Double
decent.
bubble.
If you
Yeah.
finish, yeah, if you finish in the top 2 or 3. But to finish eighth and to have won a card that I think I'll struggle to get point 4 for. It does make me think a little bit about my strategy for this weekend and where I position my cards. Whereas I think before I got used to get quite excited if I had a couple of cards that had that like under 40 average, and now I'm like, well, if I think that player is could put up a 60, 70, I'm probably not going to put them in specialist. I may be better putting them in all star and seeing how that gets on, because my all star my all star team my all star pro won a card this week, a tier 1, and that was the Velasquez, which is a way better reward
Yeah.
than the team that I put out in specialist. But some of the cards I put into specialist put up at 80 plus scores. That one of the players who is normally like one of my most reliable cards, Takuya Iwanami, I got a super rare. He put up like a score of like 28. And I still managed to finish in the cards amazingly because Boshnevics put up 100. Cecilia put up close to 100. Tony Kroos put up just shy of 80. So it was like across the board, the rest of the team did well. Um, and it just makes me think that, I put some of those big potential scorers into specialists because I had Gvardiol and Trap that fit the under 40 average score. which I thought great. That's a really deep. If you've got two good players that fit that under 40 criteria, you look at the specialist straight away. I think I don't know about you, but I always do. If I see a couple of good under 40 averages, but after the weekend and finishing as high as I did and seeing what everyone above me and around me won, it does make me think. What would that have score of have won me in All Star or a similar division? And I think like it's going to probably like make me look less at specialist this weekend and maybe just kind of put the odds and ends in there at the end. Once I've put all the big hitters in the main divisions, I think. What about you?
I had that exact kind of feeling when it was all said and done this game week because, like, I had in that team that did pull a tier 3 rare, which is, he does start for Auxerre in Ligue 1, so he's not like awful, wee Brazilian guy, I can't remember his name, it's like 28. And, but like Magno did brilliant, Magno had a great score. And who else did I have alongside? I'm just trying to pull the team up now, sorry. I finished 99th, so you finished like 10th or something, didn't you?
Eighth, I
Eighth.
finished. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like 91 points behind you, 91 spaces. Goalkeeper kind of let me down, but I had Guardiola on an 81, Tanaka on a 76, Magno on a 90, and then Andrade on a 25. So, like, I guess when I look at the guy, so Andrade was one of my L15 under 40 qualified, and I'm not too, I probably did have an option that did better than 25, but how far off was I to something better? Yeah, I was 6 points off of a tier 2, actually, so I would have got something much better with a little bit more pointage. And if I could have got another 40 points, I wouldn't have been too far away from you, maybe. So anyway, by the by, when I was looking at that score, I was like, man, I should have had Magno in a team, whatever. But then I had to remind myself that I did build this team because, like, I wasn't sure how the games were going to go, and some of these guys were more questionable than the people that did play in these other divisions. And that's the kind of utility I've been dying for on Sorare for so long, is a fun division where it is like the guys that I do want to play, but they don't fit into the apex situation I've got going on in All Star or in under 23 Rare Pro or whatever. So I had that same feeling as well. But then I think, right, well, next time I'll do this. And I think, oh, well, actually, I can't play him there because I've got Jota, and I can't play him there because I've got,
Mm,
Super Rare something else, or, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think it's about selection, and it's like, it comes down to what we were kind of chatting about before in terms of like prioritization. And it's like sometimes you get into this little habit of you build the teams because you can build the teams, and then you make sure that all your teams are built well and they're all round and they're all well constructed and they've all got a 6 out of 10 chance. That's kind of what most people kind of default into. And I think
yeah,
specialist, you can end up pulling a card some or not, or you can maybe talk yourself down on a card so that you can put it in there, and then it's like, man, I shouldn't have really, I should have maybe rated that a bit more appropriately than what I did, and that's maybe
got
the
you.
regret.
I, I think I've just had a little look at the prize pool for the weekend coming up, and I think that something that sticks out to me that may or may not be seen as a problem is the best card you can win in terms of rare in the specialist tournament is a tier 2, and obviously it's not quite the caliber of a tier 2 in one of the regions.
Mhm.
It's like the best tier 2 in the pool this weekend. The top of it is De Vicas, who plays as a forward for Utrecht, and he didn't even start the last game. His average over the last 15 is 42. So it's not really tempting the big cards to be used in the division, because you wouldn't use an Mbappe to win a De Vicas, would you? At best case.
No.
So I think whereas before, when they first kind of like onboarded these tournaments, you could win an Mbappe in Underdog. Therefore, people are going to like use really good cards in Underdog when available.
Yep.
But now, Specialist and Underdog, I think they're geared more towards people like trying to like progress. And I understand that in Underdog because you don't need a goalkeeper, but in Specialist, you can't enter Specialist with a cheap team because it still requires a goalkeeper. Yet the
Yeah.
best you can win is a Devicas rare. It's like, I think it's not going to appeal to the big galleries, which is good in the sense that it will require a lower score to win a card, but the card you win is probably only going to be useful in Specialist next week. So I'm not sure how that progresses you. Do you know what I mean? It kind of leaves you stuck in Specialist if you are a rare player who maybe can enter All Star or can enter Specialist, if you've only got like 5 or 10 cards in your gallery, you're probably just going to go into All Star and hope for a bit of ETH because, you know, 0.3 ETH is probably equivalent of winning the tier 3 in that Specialist anyway. It might even be better than winning a tier 3 in some cases.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think like unless you're winning one of the super rare positions, but then that creates that problem of the super rares that aren't that valuable as well, which we've seen. I think
Well, so
we
if I can kind of add in at this point, what I would think, right, is or what how I look at this, right, if that makes sense, is I like what they've done to the specialist super rare in terms of adding in the uniques, right? And as we know, specialist limited is like it's got star rares on it and it's limited cards. You know, that's pretty good. But like as much as the super rares that you pick up in that specialist rare aren't really that useful, equally or not that valuable. I beg your pardon. Equally, a lot of them are not people you would necessarily go out and buy. But if you did like stash enough of them up, you're then going into specialist super rare to try and get some uniques. You know, potentially. We're talking about over long times,
yeah
longer than these competitions have even existed for. You know, so for that kind of angle of like, if you do just want to like try and like nominally, and I know it's not nominal to enter specialist rare, but like by the time you get to thinking about entering that division, it is about getting top 20 and collecting average super rares to kind of piece together over
true.
time, I think, because it's not to churn a team out. Like Specialist Limited, like every time I'm entering that, I'm trying to build the best limited team I can first, because top 5 is a star rare, and that's Mbappe, Kimmich, Messi, whoever you think about is in there all the time. So that's definitely the drive for that. But as I say, like I think these specialist divisions, like I think they're overspill. Like that's how I treat them anyway in terms of the rare. And then the super rare, I'm thinking about borderline prioritizing it. For when if I don't, I think what I need to do with that is, or what I'm thinking about doing to myself is being a bit stricter on when it's smart or not to play my uniques, because last weekend kind of woke me up. Charlie Mulgrew got injured, and Cal McGregor gets sent off. Now, this totally applies to any scarcity in any kind of team or whatever that you're playing with at home or whatever, right? But those two cards basically activate teams for me in a big way. And then they get a team built around them because of how valuable I see them in achieving, success on a leaderboard.
Mm.
And instantly when they're sniped out for next game week, I'm just going to assume Mulgrew at 35. I don't even know what the injury is. I'll even ask Tony or anything, but I'm assuming he's not going to be in, right? Is how I'm treating it. What that then does is I've then got all these extra parts that don't have like the optimal place to go anymore. And then the way I play the game, certainly, and the way most people generally do, is obviously looking to optimize the best stuff. So now I've got stuff that has been playing at a certain level, and you could look at this with like maybe you've been playing under 23, and by comparison, maybe it's easier to play All Star or Pro to just rare, whatever the equivalent that you're kind of living is applicable here. And when I'm building my lineups for this game week, I'm like, man, maybe I'd be better off not playing these divisions for a wee bit. And then it comes into, well, I've got two, and I've got two goalkeepers, and maybe then I just pick my moments a bit cuter with maybe the Mulgrew unique in particular, and play specialist super rare a bit harder and try and pull out maybe a unique or two a season and hope, cross my fingers, it's somebody decent.
It's a good shout. I mean, I've definitely won a lot of those super rares in these tournaments myself. And I think also just because I kind of started targeting D2 a little bit pre-season, and I've had some success there. But obviously, at least in the early part of the season, any D2 win was never like that heavy until most recently, when like those tier 1 super rares came in, but they were putting cards like Gakpo in there, and like the tier 1 pool in D2 has been a lot better, especially then they've added the rares in the mix as well. So D2 is like a lot more appealing now than maybe it was. And I think that brings down that kind of barrier to entry, especially in terms of winning cards for the underdog and for specialist. And, just while you was talking there, I had a little look at the underdog rare pool, and the underdog is a lot more appealing than the specialist, even though I think the specialist requires like a little bit more skill in that, like like a couple of players who score high, a couple of players who score low, one like superstar, and it's like I'm surprised that the prize pool is so much worse for specialists than it is for underdog. But I kind of love that at the same time because a gallery, what we've seen before, someone who won Messi and only had like 5 cards, and then their gallery was like 10x because they won a Messi with like a bunch of cards that cost them next to nothing. So looking at the underdog rare, you can win a Kimmich in there this week.
Yeah,
If you're in the star pool, if you come first, you could win a Kimmich, which is like an enormous card on the platform. And I've had a little look at what I've got available, and I could put Sesko in there this week. I could put Gvardiol in there. I could put Sukic in there. I could put uh, Szymanski, Paqueta. Like there's a lot of big players that I hold that are eligible for underdog this week. So maybe I look at that. I don't know. Um, Again, I do think that underdog does allow people with larger galleries in. Like as much as it does allow like people with small galleries to win, it tempts people like myself who have quite a large gallery to go could actually like put a
gives a
pretty
shot.
strong lineup in there. Yeah, but
That's kind of that's kind of me as well.
yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't. You, we want utility from our cards, and that's what keeps me buying more, keeps me reinvesting. Like anything that I make, quite a lot of it goes back in. I very rarely take much money out of the platform. I just try and, at the minute, I'm trying to condense. I'm trying to sell the kind of mid-rate cards to get another couple of like really good, solid scoring cards. Some of those top, like star rare type players, but it's difficult at the moment because I think, like you said, like I don't think people buy for the specialist and the underdogs as much. Like if you've got
Yeah,
a large gallery, you probably win cards that qualify, and you just like each week you've got more cards to choose from than you had last week if you've like won a couple of tier twos or tier threes. Um, and I do wonder, like of the top galleries, those people that have like the 2,000 ETH galleries and stuff like that. And I do wonder if you know they hold on to those lower tier wins that they get because they think they can enter them into um, specialists, whereas maybe 12 months ago they'd have been trying to offload them straight away. And I'd be intrigued to see like if that slowed down the rate of sale for people that have those huge galleries. That probably managing a gallery of that size has got to be like a full-time job as well, hasn't it? Like
for sure.
I struggle enough with mine. I think I've got about 150 cards or something like that, and it's a lot. That's a lot to. That's a lot of gardening to do. Put it that way.
Yeah, it's for sure, man. You can say that again. My card count goes up and down in little kind of waves. I think that now I've never had so few rares in forever. I'm down to 87 rares. Um,
Yeah, my
155
balance of
limiteds
rares.
is an all-time high as well for me. I think
My balance of rares and limiteds is way off what it should be. I think um, this is what I've noticed recently is that like I'll find myself in a midweek particularly where like I've got loads of super rares that I cannot use because I don't have enough goalkeepers to enter like the all star like the sort of the D3s or the D2s, and I've got way too many super rares compared to rares that are available on those weeks. So if we were to look at my gallery, probably look at it and say those particularly in those midweeks, I'm lacking rares and especially lacking like starting goalkeepers that play in those fixtures. So winning that goalkeeper in the week could be a good thing, but I need to. I've got a lot of goalkeepers, but I just feel like maybe I'm sat on quite a few goalkeepers that I'm going to be sat on for a few years, waiting for them to break into the team. So
sure,
some of it's a little bit misleading in that sense that there are a lot of cards in my gallery that I am just sat on because I know there's no point selling them right now. Like if you've got that luxury to sit on a card, I'm quite patient with my gallery. Like you get offers from people all the time, like he's not playing, like I'll offer you like a tenner for it, and it's like, well,
yeah,
I'll rather just sit on it for 2 years and hopefully it'll become worth 180 quid when it starts playing. And
yeah.
yeah, I try not to sell the red crosses too much. I try and hold on to those. Um, but yeah, it's like classic, like talking to Tony. He loves to chop and sell, and as soon as a player like loses form, he's like getting rid and getting someone else in. And yeah, I don't know about you, but how patient can you be with your players? Do you find yourself able to hold on to them, or are you someone who needs to get rid as soon as like a red cross or a bad moves on the horizon?
It's hard, man. Sometimes you can. I think if you can yank the cord quick enough, sometimes it's just probably the best move to make. But like sometimes, like again, just depending on what the situation is, you just got to take your medicine on it, and you just got to wait for maybe it to come back into play somehow. Like I've got a few cards that have got red and blue X, like at this
Yeah,
point years ago, and are still in that situation. And I'm just like, hey, well, I've waited this long. I'm, you know what I mean, like I've not, might as well just leave them there now again, still further because it's, like I've waited this long. It would be foolish now not to see
exactly.
them come over the line whenever the hell it does happen. if,
Yeah,
and I suppose if is still ever present, but when you go this long waiting, sometimes it becomes surely it's just a case of bad fortune or whatever. But yeah, so that's
yeah,
kind of my take on it most of the time. And El Tanaka is probably the poster child um,
yep. The
of
patient
that.
playing the long game. Yeah,
Yeah, because that D2, obviously, no one could have foreseen that and him going to D2 because he was like, he's still one of my biggest reward winning. He won a reward this weekend and with that team with the Magno, he's one of my luckiest cards. Like,
yeah.
he's seriously like won a shitload of cards. I didn't even realize that Tanaka was in that team. That is like, see if you look at the reward history for it, if anyone's bored, go into my Sorare data thing and look at it. Like, he's won tons of stuff for me and he's not played in like 2 years now and he's already back at it, man. But yeah, so there's ones like that, and then I've got ones like Gonzalo Martinez or Pity Martinez, he's known as, but on his card it says Gonzalo. And this guy was South American Player of the Year, won the Copa Sudamerica at age 25 and stuff like that. Was maybe going to go to Europe for 30 million, but went to Atlanta United and it was a fucking dumpster fire. And then he's went to Saudi Arabia. And then after 3 months, got an ACL, was out for like 18 months or something, or 12 months, whatever it is, and then he's came back and it's like off season or something and he's not been so like at every point where it's like I think he maybe came back but it was off season and then the new season started and they got injured again or something, but it's like even though that team plays in Asian Champions League, I've never managed to actually get him on a pitch after the first like month of owning him when he
Uh,
did briefly actually play for Atlanta. But that guy, I'm like, he was South American Player of the Year. Like he was like, that's a big thing. He won, so at some point he will leave Saudi Arabia. At some point. He's only
yeah,
like 28 or something, 27. At some
yeah.
point he has
Well,
to leave. And I'm sure he's on a big juicy contract, but I'm probably halfway through it now at this point. So I might as well wait, so it depends. And then there's other ones like as soon as it happens, I'm trying my best to get a sniff of it and trying to get it moved on in a trade or something, so
I'm just having a look now at our Tanaka as well. Now
yeah.
you mentioned it, I just clicked on it to see like what it's won you, and it's won 6.11 Ethereum's worth, like the current value of all of the cards it's won. Did I didn't realize that it won you a Florian Wirtz card.
Yeah. So Tanaka was one of my big U23 plays, like
Yeah.
early doors. Like a guy that I just thought I'm buying him, man. I'm all
Mm.
over it. Because you know what it was with Tanaka, and this is actually something that's a really great thing to remember, is I know, see, as soon as the J League came on, this is how long I've been playing the game, right? As soon as the J League came on and everyone's like, J League's on and you're jumping around having a scout, the first thing I looked at was every young player of the year that happened in that division, right? And you go back 10 years and you just try and find maybe one or two of them are 28 and they're useful now or something like that, right? And what I found is I went back to like 2010, 2011. Every Japan Young Player of the Year transferred the season after winning that award. Every one of them exclusively, except for Ao Tanaka. He won it the year before they came on board and he was still at Kawasaki. And I was like, well, this guy moves to Europe, man. He goes to
Yeah.
Belgium or something and he'll be really good somewhere else. So I buy him, he kicks ass and takes names, and then he moves to Dusseldorf.
I
But he
remember.
also won Young Player of the Year again. I think he won it twice. He won the league and all that. But he was there for like I got a good run with him, and
I
then he went
bought
to
him.
Dusseldorf.
I bought him in the closed season on the off chance that they wouldn't renew his loan because they had an option to
Oh yeah,
continue, and there was a few whispers that they weren't going to. They were in trouble financially and they were going to have to let him go. So I thought, I'll buy him because if he does end up back at Frontal, he'll be a really useful card. And
yeah,
worst case scenario, I can use him in the World Cup. So I had to sit on him when they did it. They extended his contract Like they took up the option literally a day after I did it. So I was just like egg on my face. It seemed like I was like, great, what a waste of ETH. Like, but it's come good. I think he's probably worth less now than he was when I paid for him, purely because
I've noticed that
uh,
too.
yeah, the supply's there now. But he's a good player. I don't mind holding on to him. And like
He's a cult
things.
hero for me, man.
Yeah, I'm sure he's won me some cards as well already. I'd need to check mine out, but
I got
I've
him
got
on
a
auction
feeling.
for £45.
Oh, you
You
can't
know what I mean?
complain there, can you?
He's a cult hero, first owner and all that. Number
£45.
13.
That's incredible. I mean, I look at my like the earliest cards I've got, like my oldest in my gallery. If I go back to like the last page, I think I can guess that it's going to be Yaramchuk. I'll have a look and see, but I'd imagine Yaramchuk. Um, Sorare is a bit slow for me. Yeah. Roman Yaramchuk, I paid £100 for. The oldest card in my gallery is Florian Wirtz. I paid £307 for that, and Sebastian Szymanski, £84.
My
There.
oldest card seller's Larson for £27. I've recently sold Trippier for the £45 super rare.
Yeah,
That guy Pity Martinez I was telling you about, he was £35. So like, and I had a wee. He has won me some rewards as well. But see, when I look right at the back of my gallery, I did this recently when I was like evaluating my gallery and thinking about trades that I've done, and some things I maybe want to try and repeat again, like maybe some bench warming goalkeepers, for example, that kind of
yeah.
vibe. And anyway, what I've discovered, right, is I've bought Trubin and Tanny within like a week of each other, and the combined like cost of that was £100
Wow,
for
that's
those two guys. So I've still got both of them. But that was quite cool, I thought. And then I think like, I must have had like a wee budget of £100 because the Tribune was like kind of like, I got Tanny on auction, so I think I got Tanny, then maybe I had a bit of leftovers, and I was like, oh, I'll just go spend the rest of this on Tribune or something.
yeah.
But I quite like that. It's quite cute.
That's a nice little like yeah. I think I've sold a few of my older cards recently. Obviously, like Milinkovic Savic was part of a bundle which cost me next to nothing, and I think I sold him for an ETH, and I like the kind of average cost across that 5-player bundle was like 0.068 ETH or something ridiculous. I think I paid like point 0.3 for all 5 cards, and one of them was Milinkovic Savic, and I think I had like Pepe Reina in there as well. It had like a goalkeeper in it and everything. But
Nice.
yeah, I'm just looking back at like the players I've got left from those kind of early purchases, and you've got Wirtz, Yaramchuk, Szymanski, Musiala, who I paid 145 quid for, got the number 4 mint. Um, Lokonga, who was amazing at Anderlecht, wasn't he? He was
Yeah,
incredible. Do you know what? Actually, this was something that I did want to pick your brain on. Something that popped into my head the other week was I was watching Monaco play, and Diatta was playing Crepin Diatta, and it made me think, oh, do you remember that player? Like when he was at Bruges was when I first started on So Rare, and he
I
was
had
one of the
one.
most expensive cards on the platform. It's like Crepin Diatta, absolutely smashing it every week, and then he moved to Monaco, and like I think like players now who just joined in the last 6 months will probably not believe that that player was,
Wild
like
man.
he was like one of the heroes.
It's a
Who were some
Sadio
of the
Mane of the Belgian league, is what he
yeah,
was.
exactly. Like,
He was wildly good, man. I loved him.
so for you've been on a platform longer than me. Like, are there any other cards that pop into like any players that pop into your head that like unbelievable heroes of like yesterday, basically? Like Diatta was one for me, but
I
are
think
there any other
Vlasic.
players? Oh yeah, Vlasic is a great example actually.
Vlasic was like the under 23 Morioka,
Yeah,
like he was just like
CSKA.
apex, like done 80s every week, no problem at all. And then
Yeah,
I won him, and then he went bad, and then he moved to West Ham. So I never got full Vlasic effect. I won him, and I was buzzing. I was like, yes, Vlasic. And
yeah,
but yeah, he's at Torino. I think he'll have a wee bit of a resurgence this season, actually. Vlasic, I don't think he's U23 anymore, so he's just a
no.
champ Euro mid, which, if that's your thing, that's what you need.
I mean, a couple of seasons ago, there was obviously that Rio, the Kikuchi was like the big one, wasn't it? Kikuchi's kind of had a really shocking season at Kobe. Obviously, he's had an injury and stuff like that as well. So I don't think we could write him off just yet. But he was another one who was like unplayable for weeks on end. I think he put up like 500s in a week in a row or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
But be
He was
interesting
he
to
used
see.
to hit pure. He used to hit really crazy form in that
Yeah,
sense. But yeah, for me, those kind of older players like the big titans, a lot of them are still knocking around, but there is some of them that have fell by the wayside, like the Vlasic's, and there's been a
get a
few other
bad move.
ones. Yeah, with a bad move, or Red X or whatever. Alunga as well from the J League, like he was the
Yeah,
forward at Kashiwa Racehall, and then
yeah.
he was like, two, 3 seasons on the trot, exceeded 30 goals, was a killer, and then just went to Saudi Arabia. He's a Kenyan international.
I think
Um,
is he not playing in the Chinese Super League again now? I feel like he's eligible for
oh, is
SO5
he?
again. I
Oh,
think
really?
he
That
is.
might
Yeah.
ring a little bell actually, but I didn't know that. Know that? Let me
There's a
check.
few monsters in the Chinese Super League. I was looking. There's a couple of random players out there that are banging like
No, it
70
still
plus
says
average.
Al Dubai, Al Dubil, or something.
Oh
Al
right,
Dub
okay. So he's eligible for the Champions League, but not
Champions
for.
League only. Yeah.
That's it. That's probably where I got mixed up. Um, that brings me on to something else as well. Actually, a lot of people have been talking about like the World Cup but a lot of divisions are finishing now. Have you found yourself looking at teams that are coming up from the second tiers to see if there's any players covered? Have you got any kind of strategy around that? Because I've definitely been having a look at players that should like lose the red X in the next few months. Is that something that you like to do? And have you picked anyone up yet?
No, I've just kind of went through a little. I've just recently went through a kind of little rebalance, kind of looking ahead at the calendar and how I see myself kind of doing well and competing on the leaderboards. I'm just kind of going. I'm kind of going more streamlined. As I say, like I think I've kind of maybe fell into a happy accident this weekend with not having the uniques available, and like that same kind of principle that I'm experiencing with those two cards, I was kind of putting myself into anyway with like maybe just the amount of like elite rares uh,
Mm,
and that kind of thing I was carrying. So I think I'm trying to keep everything. See, so through this next period, we get MLS goalkeepers for like maybe definitely one more match for the ones I've got, and then if they win, maybe another 2 or 3 if we're really lucky, right? But basically, just call it one more match. And then after that, I'm down to just Europe. So I am literally just going to be playing All Star. Like that's all I'm going to be playing. With like my heart and my All Black and all my under 23 pieces, Harwood Bellis and Jota and all these things. I'm just going to be playing All Star. And then
mm,
I'm going to, for the position I've got myself into is I do need and want maybe another 2 goalkeepers, but I'm not in a rush to get them in the now because I do have the American keepers at least playing for another week or two. And the
yeah,
kind of hope and desire for me for just where I'm exactly at this moment in time is that those goalkeeper utility that I still have for the remainder of whatever they run for can hopefully, like, I've won actually maybe 3 or 4 goalkeepers over the last 2 months and sold them all. So like I don't mind winning another tier 1 goalkeeper now, like that would be fine, like if I could luck my way into something like that, where I get some random tier 1 goalkeeper that scores 40 points, I don't mind. Throw him into specialist.
yeah,
And as well, I can make underdog a bit stronger because I'm not going to be as wide abreast of everything. So
yeah,
I can just get my better underdog pieces in there and maybe try and focus in on that a bit better. So that's kind of where I'm at for the now. But that problem or that situation won't serve me very well for very long past like the middle of January, early February when all the leagues come back in
yeah,
because the prize pools everything will be popping off and I want to be involved in it. But MLS is back on the 28th of February or something. So
yeah,
there is going to be a real kind of pain zone for where I'm at now if I don't get my act together in terms of the goalkeeper count for like 8 weeks. But that's so there's a few kind of pieces of jeopardy that I'm not. Yeah, are they really that bad to miss out on?
yeah,
Maybe partly yes, partly no. And I'm just trying to balance that up properly and make sure that because I don't want to go and buy basically punchline. I don't want to go and buy a D2 goalkeeper the now for point 0.8 that some of the ones I'm looking at are on the secondary. And then we get to the end of January and for whatever reason, demand is exceeded or been satisfied a bit more, yada, yada. All the cycle things that normally happen. But maybe the D2 keepers, who knows where they go down to in off season, or who knows, really when everything gets a bit more flavoured up once once all these other things happen later on. Whereas D2's actual kind of home in the game, maybe it
yeah,
is kind of placed around where it is, and then maybe you can ride the peaks and the troughs, and that's fine. But it's the exact same as limiteds for me when these things first came out is you don't know. There's no track record. There's not a lot of comparables that will pass the muster test. If that makes sense. Yeah, you can say like, oh, this league has came in or that happened before, but it's very different. It's a D2, and there's a lot of random crap teams in there as well.
Yeah,
There's a lot of random crap players that will disappear and go to Division 3, believe it or not, or they'll go to Division 2 in Bulgaria or something like that, and they will have astonishingly bad careers and they will still be red X useless cards. There's almost no getting away from that. So that's that. So I'm trying to be my cautious but direct self, if that makes sense. I want one, but I don't want to pay over. I don't mind paying enough, but it's
yeah,
risk management.
yeah. It's going to be interesting to see, like the goalkeeper roulette close season as well. Um,
Yeah.
Goalkeepers in the off season are always mad, aren't they? Because it is so speculative. I remember obviously I picked up Maduka Okoye in the close season, and I watched his price. I bought him for 1.5, and he went up to 3 ETH at one point, and then obviously now no one's buying him because I think people are still trying to get 1.5 minimum back for him, but he hasn't set foot on the pitch for Watford in an SO5 covered match. So it's scary, like entering the goalkeeper market in the closed season. You almost want you need a little bit of assurance that you're going to get some use out of that card. I made that mistake with a couple of goalkeepers. I think it's not so bad when you do it with a young goalkeeper because if you can be patient, they've got their whole careers ahead of them. But we mentioned on the show a few weeks ago, I think I mentioned like Takanori Sergino at
Mm-hmm.
Consadole before, and we was talking about him on this show. And one of our listeners got in touch via Twitter. Let me see if I can find out who it was actually. So it was Ti Sorare. So thank you for getting in touch if you're listening again. But they pointed out to me that Sergino is a risk now because Sapporo have re-signed Gu Sung-yun, the Korean goalkeeper.
Yep.
So Sergino's day is apparently numbered at Consadole. But he has performed pretty well there, even at his age. The silver fox that he is could still find himself playing in the J League for another side. So it's you could pick him up really cheap now and take that risk, or you sell him and try not to worry about it too much. But I've definitely got a few goalkeepers that I need to figure out what I'm doing with. I was looking actually at teams coming in and up, and like Gwangju broke the points record for K League Two, so they're coming up. I was having a look at the goalkeeper options there. I
Nice.
picked a goalkeeper up for like really cheap, like 0.11, and then someone offered me a super rare in return for it as a swap. I think that the value of the super rare that I took on board was worth a bit less than the card I paid for, but it was after sort of like buying it, I had my second thoughts about it because I think that they've only really been playing this goalkeeper for the last few games since they've kind of like
Mm-hmm.
won the league, and it's just given him some minutes. But sometimes I do jump in and just buy. So when someone gave me the option to get rid, I was like, yeah, I probably bought that a bit too quick. But for point one point 0.11 ETH, I think I paid for him. There are potential bargains out there if you want to take those risks. So I think that there's not a great deal of scouting that you can do that isn't easy to do on like so rare data. And everyone can see it. But
Yeah.
those are the little ones where like, oh, if you know of someone who's moving from a D2 club into, in the regions that aren't covered for D2. But like, what's to say that those regions don't end up becoming covered at some stage as well? There's also that. Could you see them opening up D2 into some of the other regions beyond, like, obviously we've got it in the champ region. Do you think we could see it in Asia or America or a challenger?
No, I don't think so. I think that gets like super, super murky. Like because a lot of those D2s, the infrastructure is nowhere near the same as what it is, and like even in the bottom end of Serie B and these kind of teams and whatever, that is like then the biggest they're the best team in the division
Yeah,
below that, and do you want subsequently then the mid-table version of that, and then subsequently so I don't no I don't no I don't see it to be honest with you. Maybe the MLS one a little bit, because the way the MLS one is going to work is it's not this like the MLS is obviously a franchise based kind of model and whatever, so it is almost like a kind of I, I don't want to say it's like it's like the junior league or it's like their college kind of setup or whatever, but it is like an independent thing where teams have feeder teams that they can drop players into and give minutes to, and there will be some guys that like maybe hot prospect players that are coming out of like youth academies or whatever will get minutes in these places. So that could be really interesting. But that, yeah, I suppose they could go into a D2 and work pretty well, I guess. That would probably be quite good. And MLS would probably be quite happy to promote that alongside like the Championship and League Two and La Liga and whatever. So that
yeah.
could be something, I suppose. Yeah,
I
but
mean,
yeah, beyond that, no.
they could lump them all into the same D2, couldn't they? It doesn't necessarily have to be like Champ D2, which is what we've currently got.
Mm-hmm.
It could we could see
like maybe, yeah, maybe at an absolute stretch, like you would have the same kind of situation that we have with maybe like Russia, for example, where like J2 and K2 are Opta covered. And if
yeah,
you've got cards that get relegated, then you can play them in the D2 division.
yeah.
But they're not getting,
They're
they're
not
not in
going
the
to mint
reward
them.
pool, they're not getting auctioned or anything. But yeah, if you had J1 cards that get relegated, then they've you can still play them, but only here, kind of vibe or something.
Yeah, I can see that. That could make sense. I think just like a bit more coverage for like basically losing a few more red crosses, but not creating like a bigger supply. Like
Yeah.
a bit more utility for cards that get relegated is always nice, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe you don't want to
I
win.
think that's the limit. Like I think
Yeah,
that's kind of more than that is just overkill. Like,
I'd agree with that. I think that's sensible as well. Like you said,
yeah.
like we could end up with way too many cards otherwise. Like the auctions would just be crazy, and people would be winning like random players they never heard of for the rest of their lives. But yeah, I think that's a good point you make. What is what's your big hopes for the game week this weekend ahead?
Well, this weekend, like I was telling you, with perhaps my condensed, boiled down strategy again. Almost, I've been kind of doing that overall, but now I'm doing it with taking D2 teams and pushing them down, if you like, into D3s and whatever. It's probably my all-star rare pro. Obviously, we'll see how Celtic go tonight, and obviously feeling any injury or any seismic events. I'm playing my super rare Kyogo in D3, the one I won, the hoops one, with my Jota as captain. I'm playing my Stefano Sensi, who I picked up at the weekend before he racked 100, and he's at home at Spezia. Then I'm playing super rare Harwood Bellis. Then I'm playing Coronel in goals. He's at home to Charlotte, who are relatively notorious for being worse away from home than they are at home. It's just one of my better goalkeeper fixtures. So I really think that team is proper podium dangerous, and it's how exciting that team feels to me is kind of when I build that, I'm like, man, yeah. Like, I don't care if these guys are U23 or maybe because
Yeah,
that Kyogo would almost always go D2 as well, So, like, that team looks great to me, feels great, and I hope it obviously pans out for the best, of course. So, yeah, that's probably what I'm the most excited about. What about you, Stishy Boy?
I've gone for my mate. Like the first team I set up this week is U23 Pro because I've got some good fixtures. But just before we started recording this, I had another little look at it again, and I thought because the fixtures are quite favourable for Ajax, particularly, I did have Kenneth Taylor super rare in there, and now I'm thinking, maybe they rest him and give like Klaassen a start on the weekend because they're playing Volendam. They're playing like one of the weaker sides in the division.
Mm-hmm.
So that threw a little bit of a spanner in the works to what looked like a really solid team on paper. But I do have the option of swapping out Taylor for. I went for. Let's have a little look at what I've got currently. 2 6. So I've gone for. Where is it? U23 Pro. Here we go. At the moment, I've got Lucas Gorna-Duaf in there, and I've gone with a kind of like a half stack of Salzburg. So I've got Pavlovic captain, Benjamin Sesko up top, Gorna Duaf super rare, Veerman super rare, and Bayezid in goal.
Nice.
And you know, like when you use the advanced like lineup builder, that looks very good, very favourable matchups for all of them. The only problem I've got now, potential spanner in the works, is after we was talking earlier about Underdog, and I looked at that, and Sesko is available for Underdog. And if I really wanted to target that, I think Sesko has to be in that Underdog team. So that might throw a spanner in the works. And I think that that is probably going to be the biggest headache between now and Friday when I'm picking those teams is, do I go Underdog or do I go U23 Pro? And I
Interesting.
think having that Veerman Super Rare is like, you know, you've got to put a good team around that.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's either D2 heavy or D3 in U23 while Veerman is available as a U23, I think. So yeah, I think that's going to be my main dilemma between now and the game week closing. Is what do I do with Sesko? And if I decide that I'm going to put him in Underdog, then maybe Veerman gets moved into D2. Maybe I go D2 heavy. I'm going to have another look. But yeah, I've not had a proper look yet. I'm still quite early in the lineup builder. But yeah, I think at the moment, leaning towards U23 Pro is like my main entry. But Underdog definitely looks good. And I think I've got some options there. So come the weekend, it might be Underdog that I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, fingers crossed for it. Feeling good about it. And hopefully I get a bit of end product in the midweek. If Salzburg bring home the bacon a bit later.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for you, buddy. Fingers crossed for the hoops later on tonight as well.
Yes, good luck.
And
enjoy the game.
Enjoy your loan Ibiza.
Yes, yeah, and I'll be back looking shaky and a little bit weak this time next week, no doubt.